The 2020 election was fraught with problems, with many questioning the integrity of the vote in certain places. Part of what made the election so different was the COVID pandemic.
I think there is legitimate concern about what happened in prior elections and the 2020 election, but I think the 2020 election is unique. It's a unicorn. It was held in the middle of a pandemic.
Because the left always cares supremely about power, to use a famous line from a famous leftist, they never let a crisis go to waste. Obviously, COVID is a crisis, but the question is, how can we use that to affect election policy? Because elections are still the way people gain power.
The COVID pandemic gave a lot of left-wing groups a perfect excuse to say, well, we have to change everything for this election in 2020. We have to throw out all the old rules. We have to have new rules that were not passed by the legislature, which is the normal accepted procedure. They were promulgated by emergency orders from governors or even just health bureaucrats who aren't elected by anyone.
In 2020, mail-in ballots were widespread across the nation, with the main goal being to make voting safe for everyone. However, these new election rules opened the door to potential fraud.
In the 2020 election, there were all these changes made in election rules, and there was this big push to put in all-mail voting. Now, the excuse they gave was COVID. But keep in mind that even when the COVID shutdown was occurring, what were people doing all over the country? Going to their grocery stores, going to pharmacies. There was no valid reason why polling places could not be open. People couldn't vote just using the very same rules, wearing masks, cleaning surfaces, keeping voters 6 feet apart.
The absentee balloting is a control mechanism, and if you're in the military, you are deployed away from your voting location, or you're going to be out of the country or not able to be at your polling location. That is what absentee balloting is about. But these unsolicited mail-in ballots that found their way into the most recent election cycle, that's very disconcerting, and that's the type of things that we don't want to see repeated.
Everybody who's honest knows that vote by mail is one of the easiest ways to enable fraudsters. I don't know the extent of fraud in the 2020 election, I don't claim to, but I know that if you massively increase vote by mail, you massively increase the odds of fraud.
Along with mail-in ballots, drop boxes were set up in numerous locations to accept filled-out ballots. But in the 2020 election, many of these drop boxes were left unattended, unsupervised, without any surveillance.
Some of the things that we have seen, these deviations, such as these ballot boxes and drop boxes, this is what leads to having nefarious activities.
This was something pushed by the left, was the idea that we needed drop boxes. Unattended, unsurveilled, unguarded drop boxes for people to put absentee ballots in.
The state of Georgia and a number of other states also have these kind of remote ballot drop-off boxes. So in the 2020 election, trying to accommodate as many people as possible given the insanity of COVID, a lot of those boxes certainly were susceptible for malfeasance. And so they were, outside of a public building, for instance. A lot of them were not terribly secure. Some of those boxes literally disappeared. The night that early voting ended, an early drop-off box would just vanish.
Another issue that has caused a lot of concern regarding the integrity of the vote is a tactic known as ballot harvesting.
Ballot harvesting is one of the worst innovations in elections. It's when a person can go out and collect absentee ballots or mail-in ballots from other people and then turn them in. It's illegal in all states to do this for money because it's an obvious way to corrupt the integrity of the vote.
Ballot harvesting, I have to tell you, without a doubt, it is wrong. It's unconstitutional, and that's not what we want to have out there. And that's one of the things that we have to clean up. And that's one of the instances or nefarious actions that is undermining the confidence that people have in our electoral system.
In the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas, some campaign workers were even being paid to harvest votes.
They have people called politiqueros in South Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, who have been convicted of ballot harvesting this way, intimidating people. That's election fraud. That's vote fraud. Some places they call them ballot-caros. and they go from house to house, and they get ballots out of mailboxes and then fill them out, turn them in. They find lists of people who have died in the area, and they know they're still on the voter registration lists. And when you have a system that mails out ballots to everybody on the voter registration list, that leaves room for vote fraudsters to go harvest the ballots, fill them out any way they want.
The 2020 election shed light on many of these terrible election rules, leading to some states making changes.
The Wisconsin Supreme Court on July 8th issued a huge decision favoring election integrity, and that was that Wisconsin law prohibits the use of unmanned absentee ballot drop boxes and prohibits someone delivering someone else's absentee ballot to the clerk. State after state after state, laws have been passed to improve election integrity, including banning private money from election administration, keeping the billionaires out of the counting room. That's really important. We need to keep voting for election integrity supporters, and there's a lot of momentum on the ground. We've been speaking across multiple states, the swing states, particularly Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and people are coming out because they know if we don't have fair and equal elections, it's over.
Well, the good news is, since 2020, there's been a lot more awareness of what happened and the potential problems that indiscriminate mail-in voting can have. And a lot of states have reformed their laws, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, other places. And also there's been more interest in early voting. Early voting has advantages over mail-in voting. It responds to the public desire for more convenience and more flexibility in voting. But it means that you cast your ballot at a government office, let's say up to 2 weeks before an election, and you do it in the presence of government officials so that minimizes the chance of corruption.
Election integrity is foundational to our democracy. There's a lot of trust required to run this country, and the trust is established by the people having fair and equal elections and their representatives then making the laws.
The two objectives of any election have to be, one, you have a fair and honest election, but two, the public has to be confident that the outcome was in fact fair and honest, and that the person who actually got the majority of votes is declared the winner. That's important because voting is fundamental to maintaining our democratic republic. And if people don't have confidence in the outcome of an election, they're not going to go vote.
People need to know that their vote counts. That's why election integrity is so important. But they can't wait for the perfect election. They have to go out and vote. Their vote could be one of the determinants about whether a conservative takes office or a liberal takes office.